Being your own coach, you're kind of the only one that can measure that.
Right.
So, obviously you're not going to be able to go out and shoot hundreds with 4 in conditions like today, or hundreds with 5 or 6 or whatever. And if that's your training goal, every time you walk out to shoot standing, be prepared to not shoot a lot of standing. You know what I mean? Because those conditions don't afford themselves all the time. I will play the hand I'm dealt. I don't shoot a lot anymore. I don't shoot the number of rounds I used to. So when I go out to train, it's kind of, well, I'm here, might as well,
It is what you got.
Right, and figure out how to fight my way through it and see what happens. Basically, I attack each day the same. Analyze my position, make it the best I can, do what I can with what I got. So I try not to shoot in conditions that will be a detriment to what I'm trying to do, hurt myself or someone else.
Right.
But so if it's a question is, are they going to make us shoot this thing? And I definitely won't shoot it on my own. But to go out and train, this is more training than I've done in the last 3 years. So, and I've shot 20 rounds standing.
Well, there you go. Now more of the question more for the value of some of the other guys.
As I said earlier, I think it's easier to create bad habits shooting in bad conditions that will only make you a fair shooter in bad conditions.
Until you mastered the position.
Right. You'll learn enough bad shooting in conditions like this, or teach yourself enough bad that come time to shoot in a calm condition, you'll be doing something that involves a primate and a pigskin. Is that on tape?
Was that on tape?
Scratch that eel.
Primate and a pigskin. That's.
I didn't hear a bad thing about that.
All right. So that kind of culminates everything from before the break, ties that off in a knot, answers all the questions that were asked, I guess. Does it address all the concerns we had? I didn't think the standing conditions today were awful. They were certainly not ideal, but I didn't think they were awful. Had we shot 20 shots per with the dry fire, we'd have gone into some rougher winds, so I think we made the right decision. Basically just saying that because it was my decision. Told you the jokes were bad, they're not getting any better.
What would you consider that Perry conditions?
Some days. Not all Camp Perry days are bad. I've shot a lot of hunters standing at Camp Perry. Not a lot of them were done in conditions like today. Let's go through some sitting. Did everybody understand the goal of the training for the sitting drill? What's everybody's initial assessment of the sitting drill for those that have never done it before? Who has never done the sitting drill before? Okay. What did you guys make of it?
I like it.
What,
Something I've never worked on, and
what did you like about it?
the fact that it made me think more about having to get back into that natural point aim and focus more on that first round out of the second mag.
That's kind of what it's supposed to do. Smitty, do you have your hand up? You've never done it before?
No, not. I've done the 2 and 3s before, just shoot rapid fires and conserve ammo, but never really comparing where the first 2 went compared to the next shot. It was always just what's the 5 shots down there.
Right. You probably don't have much of a frame of reference, but what'd you think? What'd you get out?
Same thing he's done, but I've never done it where I knew where the first 2 went and then the rest of them went.
It's all about getting as much information out of what's available to you as possible. I mean, the more information you can get out of it, the better you can analyze the results. And again, with 20 mile an hour winds pushing you in a sitting position, it's tough to say that this one's over. And obviously a single shot away from the group is explainable, but the big shifts in magazines worth of ammunition is kind of what we're looking for. And there were a couple that were in obviously different locations, but for the most part, by the end of the 2 and 3 exercise, most people were shooting a 3-round group right on top of the 2-round group, conditions notwithstanding. So from a guy that was watching it, I'd say that A, we figured some stuff out, or B, we achieved the desired end state. Okay, now the question to the audience is, what changes did you notice that you made to achieve that end state, if you noticed anything? Or was it just going through the motions and doing what you're told?
I'm a pretty all-around shitty sitter as far as sitting goes. No mystery on that. But I take that and I really use my gear during those exercises. I tried throwing the mags in a couple different places, tried dropping them in a couple different places. Because mag change to me is important, because that's one of those things that you see people who will shoot 100 with 8, 100 with 7 all day long, and they have one magazine that won't go just in the first time they put it, and it wrecks them for that next 8 rounds. Like it got inside their little system they're not used to. So, and I'm kind of the same way. I just at least want to make sure that I'm doing things the right way. I play with my gear a little bit with a jacket. And
Of the talking points that I have written down as it pertains to the sitting exercise, I have rapid fire mechanics was the first one I wrote down. There are the list of ways to do things separately and uniquely different from the next guy is endless. But it's not like it has to be that way. You don't have to do things differently from the next guy just because you want to, okay? I see a lot of people try to perform a magazine change with the butt of the rifle still on the shoulder. Gervasio, you're one of them, right? Not anymore?
I was.
Arms are a little short, huh? I'm just.
I used to roll over. I leave it in the thing and I just roll over, push the magazine release, and on top of my stool would be my next magazine, and I just go right and roll back down.
I mean, I understand the shortcuts that it seems to overcome, but the things that it prevents, watching the magazine go into the magazine well, hearing the magazine click in the magazine well, reaching the bolt release, seeing the bolt release, you know, watching the first round go into the chamber, hearing it go into the chamber. There's certain things that the shortcuts you're taking don't pay off the risks. They're not worth the reward of the potential risk that it's hiding.
I think my concern was when I was doing that, was putting that buttstock back in the same exact spot.
Well, there's tips and tricks to relocating the rifle butt back in the shoulder that will not only put it back in the same spot, but probably be more consistent than all that moving around behind the rifle butt with it still in your shoulder. Because I have left elbow, I've seen people, while the commands are being given, their non-firing elbow is not in position in their knee. You know, there's no reason for that left elbow to not be in position while the commands are being given. The last thing you did prior to the commands being received was to dry fire, to check your position, check your match point aim. As soon as you lift that elbow, what have you just done? You just destroyed everything. Now you have to rebuild it. Well, 60 seconds is plenty of time to shoot 10 shots, but is it enough to rebuild your position, then shoot 60 or 10 shots? Maybe. Well, why risk it? You know, if the last thing you're going to do is check the position and dry fire a shot and be satisfied with it, then remain as in the position as you can, you know, while you're waiting to receive the commands. Where we put our gear, magazines specifically. I don't want to single anybody out, but I saw one person who was leaving the rifle butt in his shoulder, reaching behind, feeling for the magazine. Okay? Well, with the rifle butt in your shoulder, you can't see, you can't take your head and move it about freely as you could without the rifle in your shoulder. So to visually locate the magazines becomes more difficult. So feeling for magazines, I mean, just seconds that are wasted by the gear not being where it should and our mechanics being a little askew now creates a situation where we're hurrying the shot process, which ends up doing what? When you make your compromises in the shot process, do the shots go close to center? Not so much, do they? So the compromises we need to make are to put our gear where we know where it is, to get our mechanics to the point where we can quickly break out of position, perform an efficient magazine change, and rebuild the position in an efficient manner. To those that keep the rifle butt in their shoulder, what is the biggest thing we're trying to accomplish with that?
Save time. Anything I can, or consistency.
Consistent position.
Consistent.
I'll be the guy who keeps his rifle on his shoulder all day long, and my magazine changes, he'll be right back on the side.
My arm's too short to do that.
You're removing
You
steps.
took it out every time?
Yeah, I'll be the person who keeps it in their shoulder every time.
The thing about it is I can do it either way, though. I can take it out, just to put it back where it needs to be, or I can leave it in. For me, it's easy, and I got long enough arms where I can just reach down, grab the magazine, reach through it, and put it in. And my magazine's like right here.
Right.
I don't even have to look, I just know it's there.
Right.
'Cause I've shot literally thousands upon thousands of rounds. I just if I had moved that thing over here, I'd be lost.
Right.
It happened to me.
Because I
was
know it
lost,
goes
there
right
goes
here.
their story, but
It just
I
goes.
moved it.
And
Thought I hunt for it.
well, part of that is taking you out of your zone by having you shoot, this many magazines and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. So you got to reload magazines, and So the exercise throws in a little bit of a variable. Now you got to have your stuff where you don't normally keep it. I got it, okay. But it also exposes perhaps a weakness in the way you operate too, right? And I'm not trying to single you out, but it was funny. Where's Waldo? But the big one I saw that really surprised me was seeing people without their left elbow down on the knee when the commands were being given. I'm like, let's see how this works out. Gear placement is everything. How many people have seen that guy on the firing line who drops his magazine, sticks the second magazine in, hits the bolt release, and then he's got to come way over here to look through his scope? How much time do you suppose that takes? How much payoff do you suppose that guy's getting out of looking through the scope? He just wants to be like the guy next to him, right? Yeah, exactly. I've been through the phase where I have to scope. I've been through the phase where, if the siders are good, screw it. I've gotten back on my sissy horse to where I like to scope all the time now. If anybody remembers inter service a couple years ago, I shot my first 10X sitting my whole life at inter service, and backed it up with a 79 with 6. As I looked through the scope, and I'm like, well, that's odd. I didn't see him. Saw him much easier last time. Surely they're in there somewhere. And I roll back into the gun. I'm like, I get this feeling, like my stomach's just flipped completely upside down. I'm like, oh no, you didn't. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. No, you didn't. And then I'm shooting. The gun's going all over the place. I'm not even looking at the sights. I'm crying. I know what happened. And target goes down. Sure enough, my target and the target next to me, excessive, insufficient. I'm like,
Oh, little shift.
yeah. That's just so you know, a 79 with 6 is not how you want to back up your first ever 10X, because that 179 looks real. That 179 with 16 looks real silly hanging on my wall.
So how do we not do that? Double check the board.
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. Has to be a part. But, when I said, and that was in 2008, so I've managed to better myself since then, but I was talking about, how a short break refreshes you. An 18-month break is not what I had in mind. That's a little bit too long. It's hard to get the wheels moving back underneath you after that. So now let's talk about shot group to shot group with the sitting exercise. It's one thing to identify magazine to magazine shot placement on a target. But what about group to group? I know some of you were using, like a minute left, Ricky?
Yeah, just a minute.
And never changed it?
Yep.
Okay. So it's safe to say that the shot group should be probably within a half minute of each other as far as the windage goes, when it's going from 17 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. So if you were plotting group after group, were the groups moving on the target? Was your position shifting? Did anybody notice changes in the location of the shot groups on target?
Not shot groups on target, but position changing. Why I put the butt higher.
Mm-hmm.
Made the suggestion, hey, put it higher. Seems when I got in position, it's like, oh, there I am. There it is. I wasn't kind of fighting.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed with Stauffer's position is it looked like the butt was getting awfully low on his shoulder, because his cant gives me a case of the heebie-jeebies. I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. There are things that are not normal in this world, and that's one of them. And it causes me pain to walk past and not say something. So in an attempt to get him away from the cant, or to take the cant out of his position, I started looking at it. And I'm like, well, he does a lot of, steering the gun with the pistol grip, which is easy to do sitting because it's right there and it makes a pretty good handle. And, he torques the cant into it, which led me to believe he could torque the cant out of it, right? Makes enough sense to me. So we started advancing things, and he said he was usually used to choking up a little farther, but he had to keep his hand out farther because the firing line slopes uphill and the targets were low. You see that from range to range, right? Those subtle differences you see from range to range. What does your data book afford you the opportunity to save you that much trouble right from the onset? Write it in there, right? I'm pretty sure that it says location in at the top of every page in your data book, right? So if you know that when you come to Camp Bullis, Texas, you got to let your sling out a notch and, don't choke up as much and place the rifle butt higher in your shoulder. Those are simple, easy notes to write down in there, right? Can you even highlight them? Circles and arrows and back each one, saying what each one was. That's an Arlo Guthrie reference for you kids in the room. But anyway, what's that? The goal of the sitting exercise is to not only check shot group to shot group, but the placement and the shifting position, and to really analyze everything about the sitting position. It's one thing to have your standing performance come apart like a Chinese motorcycle, but in rapid fire, it happens with much greater quickness, right? When the wheels come off sitting, it is a sight to behold, isn't it? I mean, through the sights or to stand and watch. You've all scored that guy, haven't you? When you're counting the shots, you're like, what is going on here, And you've all been on the gun when it happens. So it's one thing to laugh at it, but, the sitting or the rapid fire exercises is designed to prevent that from happening, to refine the rapid fire mechanics to the point where you don't have to find the magazine, you don't ever forget to close the bolt, do those things to where when you do close the bolt, now you've got 13 seconds left to shoot 8 rounds, and it's like empty trophy all over again, okay? So if you're noticing shot groups shift from exercise to exercise, figure out why, okay? Make the parts of the position and the parts of the execution, the mechanical part, more consistent so that your first 2 rounds and then your next magazine will be in the center or in the desired location, in the suspected location. Because if you miss a wind call, they're not going to be in the center, So, what questions about the rapid fire exercise or comments about the rapid fire exercise you guys have?
I made a huge change today. Probably one of the biggest changes I've done since I've done shooting in my career. I went from a 6 o'clock hold to center mass halfway through the exercise. Jerry, what was the outcome?
After you made the change, the outcome vastly improved.
Something I had tried back when I was probably an expert or sharpshooter. Never liked the center mass position. I didn't see a benefit to it. I shot better at that time with a 6 o'clock hold. Today I was like, what was that pigskin and a primate comment earlier? It was horrible, and I had to try something. So I looked back to Eric and I said, Eric, I'm gonna try center mass today. And that's, I think it was on my first, when we did the 2 and 3 with my first.
He done like 3, 2, and 3s, but it'd be like
All over
X9-7, X7-7.
What?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I'm like,
7,
what is
8,
going on?
10.
Yeah.
And then after you made the change, it went from
10X9, 10, 10,
10, 10, 10,
So, just switching to center mass hold.
Take a breath. Take a breath.
Hold on, we're still talking like in the 7-ring sitting, right?
We don't have to talk about numbers here.
I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that.
What we're really talking about is performance with the change.
Absolutely.
On something that I have tried before but didn't have a positive result. But now that I'm into that high master classification, I reintroduced it again. Yeah.
With the 7 cities.
But
You
you're
know,
not gonna
it's-
change all of your sites. I mean, you're just gonna do it for sitting, right? Are you gonna do 6 o'clock still for
It's
standing?
something I'm going to experiment with the rest of the time that I'm here.
If we ever get to the 300-yard line.
Tomorrow I'm looking much better now.
I will tell you, I shoot center mass standing and I shoot center mass slow fire and 6 o'clock rapid fire.
It's just a matter of moving the sight or your elevation knob.
Point of aim, point of impact. If you understand the point of aim, point of impact relationship, there's nothing to it.
Challenge for me from here on, I can see right now, is that after shooting umpteen million rounds, 6 o'clock, am I going to revert back to that in my sitting position halfway through a string or during magazine check? That's the challenge I'm going to be faced with.
Try it out.
I write notes in my data book.
And that's exactly the things that I'm going to have to start to work on, just because I'm changing one aspect that I've been doing for so long.
Is it flat tire or 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock.
I know
Now it's going to be center mass.
there's a lot of things you can learn from people by watching, a lot of things you can learn from people by asking. There's probably not a person in here that has sat and watched me fill out my data book or do any of that with any great inquisition or what do you do and why you do it that way. Does everybody notice I use a 4-color pen with data book? Real briefly, I use a 4-color pen for the reason that it allows me to have a system, okay? In the rapid fire strings, I use black for my front 10, red for my back 10, because I can clearly identify the trends in the groups, especially for standing, see if I'm building in a location or settling or whatever. But I always use the blue and green to make my notes after the fact. All my notes in the front end, I keep in black. So when I go into the beginning, like for sitting, I write down the same, or rapid fire, I write the same thing down before I shoot every rapid fire string. I says, focus on the front sight, good 6 o'clock hold, plenty of time. That's what I write. So that's the mindset that I have when I sit down. Now, what I'll do is after I'm done, I will make some positive affirmations after that. Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, in a different color. Because they're not in black, I know that they are notes of things that I need to be more prepared for next time. That's what the different colors allow me to do. Everybody's got their own thing, you know. I got it, I understand that, but it has to make sense for you. It's not just a book to fill out to show your friends. It is your tool to be successful, and the information must make sense to you, okay? So that's my system that I use, and that's why I use it. I used to use a 2-color pen. Then I'm like, well, when did I write that? Because there was a time in my life when I went through a lot of data books, and I'd like to reflect on ones from a year ago or 2 years ago. And, you know, I learned from my old data books that if I do it a different way, do the same thing a different way, then I can get more information out of it later. So that's why I went to the 4-color pen. So there's a lot of, the gist of what I was going with that is what I write before each sitting group. I affirm the 6 o'clock hold because I just shot center mass standing, you know. So I affirm the 6 o'clock hold for rapid fire by writing that note before I start. But congratulations on the revelation.
What does shooting 6 o'clock do for you that center mass doesn't, or is it to each their own?
Did everybody hear the question?
Yeah.
What 6 o'clock does for me and why I shoot at rapid fire is because I believe that a 6 o'clock point of aim is a more precise point of aim than center mass. And when afforded the opportunity to shoot a 7-inch 10 ring from a stable sitting position, I want a small shot group. Plain and simple. I don't shoot a lot of X's standing, need to try to shoot some sitting, okay? So I think that a 6 o'clock point of aim is more precise to afford for a smaller shot group from a sitting position. Make sense? Does this answer the question?
Yeah, I think that it'd be something that we should
Well, why I shoot a center mass hold standing is because I believe people will stare at the front sight post or stare at the target entirely too long, standing, waiting for the X, you know. I was having that problem. I couldn't move my finger. I would shoot 6 o'clock. I'm like, I'm going to stand up here for 21 and a half minutes to shoot a 20-shot string. I just stare at it too long. I'm afraid to move my finger because the movement looks so great because it's right underneath the target. Well, now that I shoot center mass, as soon as it's anywhere close to the center of the black, pow, you know.
Shoot down, sorry?
Yeah, no, what about slow fire?
I shoot center mass all the way back.
See, for a new guy too, like center mass is got more room for error. So where I shot 6 o'clock for a long time, I had to make a note about everything. Like, okay, if it's bright, I got to make a sight adjustment. And you get burned at 300 a lot shooting 6 o'clock and not knowing those things. So I would say for a new shooter, man, as a rule, shoot center mass and rapid fire because the light's not really going to mess with you if it's bright or dark or the different conditions. Center is pretty much center with center mass. You may not wad up really tight shot groups, but I mean, I'm a seasoned guy and I don't have the ability to really wad up a tight shot group. So I'm going for the war of attrition score. I want that centered up group and it needs to be as centered as possible for the groups I shoot rapid fire. So center mass it is for me. But just like him, you know, I go back to the 6, I'm holding 6 o'clock because now I can pump some X's out. You know, that's where you're going to win the match. 6. So I want to be accurate as possible.
I shoot center mass at the 6 just because of the way that I favor. I don't like to touch the windage knob at 600 yards. So I shoot center mass so I can favor. But it's all about what you can see, you know. One of the things that was brought up to me on the break that we want to discuss is eyesight or visual acuity. I just had my eyes checked, and I'm like 2015 in my shooting eye. It used to be about 2011.
Change is taking place.
Well, if you figure your eye's a muscle, my shooting eye's probably been used as much as anybody's. But I can see the difference. It takes me longer to pull focus. I don't want to sound like I'm crying, but I see the difference.
Hot day too.
Oh, absolutely. Hydration, oxygen, everything. It's all a part of it. But
I shoot center mass because the front sight post is as wide as the target. Makes favoring a joy.
yeah. It's,
6 by 6.
Like my mom.
how many people shoot a real skinny front sight?
Not anymore.
Whoa.
Go
Not
fast
anymore.
early. With your front sight.
That's at the bar.
It's dark.
I like that skinny sight.
I
I tried both.
I don't want to change whatever, you know, I don't want to move anybody's cheese, but the front sight rear sight relationship is I don't want to say a visual or an optical illusion, but as it compares to a skinny front sight versus a wide front sight, it kind of is. Your wobble area doesn't change by changing the dimension of your front sight. But when you go to a wider front sight, it doesn't appear to move as fast, and it doesn't appear to move as far. It's the same movement, mind you, but for whatever reason, when I started going to a wider front sight, which is really when I started favoring a lot, I found that my shots were inside a call, especially the shots that were moving, and that it gave me the perception that my hold was not only smaller, but the movement was slower. I don't know if it's a problem that either of you gentlemen experience. You know, I'm not looking through the sights for you. I haven't seen a scorecard lately from either one of you, so all I'm saying is if it's something you're not married to and you got an opportunity to try it, maybe one day this week look through another guy's gun who's got a wider front sight. What a wider front sight does too, it allows you to open up the rear a little bit to gain the same visual acuity of the front sight, and more light never hurts.
I've got a narrow front sight on one rifle and a wider front sight on another rifle.
Perfect. You got them surrounded.
compare the scores from the two different guns, my scores are higher with the narrow front sight, and that's why.
Maybe it's got a better barrel on it.
But, I mean, that's why I kind of constantly lean toward that.
I gotcha.
Narrow front sight.
But
Because I get better results.
I understand completely. Yeah, I mean, you go with what works for you. You know, that's the American way. But my perceptions of what I'm explaining to you seem on par with what you notice? No, I mean, do you notice it when you shoot guns, the gun go from one to the other?
I think I get a more precise aiming point with that narrow front sight.
I believe that. I mean, if you think about it, it's a more refined aiming reference. Got it. Understand that. And if it's working for you, please. I'm not asking you to change. It's just one of the most. I've seen it more times than not. People just jump to the skinniest one they can find, and wonder why they can't hit anything with it.
I mean, it's not a pistol point, but it's narrower than my sight.
Right. Just something, the wider it is, the easier it is to see for those of us with fading eyesight.
Yeah, 2015.
That'd be wrong.
Even with good eyesight, though, how tall is this car?
Right.
And how tall is this car?
Right.
It appears crap load tall, covered up, but and as far as front sights go, man, guys are great vision. Well, and you want that fat front sight, if you focus on a target one time, there's your 9 to 12 or 8 to 12, right now, whatever. This gun hammers a good group, but I pump an 8 or a 9 off the top, it's not worth it for me. I'd rather shoot more chances.
Yeah.
Perception.
It is. It's all perception. And if you're comfortable with what you see, far be it for me to tell you to change. I'm just saying that the common notion is to go, open a catalog and go straight to the skinny one and the tiniest front sight or rear sight. I don't know what you guys use for a rear sight. I shoot a 46.
52, 48.
I have to because that narrow front sight, because of my vision, looks wider. Because of the relationship between the two.
The 38.
Smallest one that Roger ever has.
Wow, can you see through that thing?
I got a 42 you can try.
I think I've got a 42 and a 48 or 52. I got
A 38's awful small.
I seen a dude shooting a 36 not too long ago.
Was he shooting real well? Well, I just,
I was like, oh my god. I've been told the average person likes right around between 40 and 42. Average.
yeah.
You shot the presidents in NTI in the last 5 years where it's rained or been cloudy?
I've shot the
It
entire.
hasn't. I've only been shooting for 5 years, so that's all I
Quite a bit of
have.
rain.
That's all I can remember is the rain and the
Yeah.
clouds.
Um,
A few times it was real nice.
and again, it's not wrong. It's just, these are things that people don't ever know, and just go with what comes with it. And one of the, especially as it pertains to marksmanship or shooting in the Army. I've said this in front of classes. I've said it to people on the range. As it pertains to marksmanship in the Army, everybody's an expert. Just ask them. Okay. Those of you that I've been mobilized with at Fort McCoy, we go out to qualification day, and the most common saying on the range is, I don't know what the problem is today, Si. I always shoot expert. Always shoot expert. I don't know what the problem is today. Then why are you trying for the 5th time? Yeah, there's a certain degree of, are you trying to convince me or are you trying to convince you that you're the expert? So, we don't know what we don't know because sometimes we don't want to hear it. Sometimes we don't know to ask the question. Sometimes we're not ready to hear the answer. Okay? I grew up shooting, the first match I ever shot was with a Ruger Mini 14. I shot that for a whole summer. I graduated to an M1 Garand at the age of 11. Okay? So the joy of going distinguished at the age of 16 with an M14 is a luxury or an experience that not a lot of you will ever understand. And it's why I punish myself every year and shoot the M1A match, but just to relive the good old days. There's certain things that you survive in this sport when you do it long enough and play with enough of the guns that make you ask questions that when you buy a Rock River out of the box and go out and shoot high master scores with it, you would never ask, okay? When you have to ask, Daddy, why does the rear sight fall down on your M1A because you just put all 10 shots in the berm and 300-yard line? Why does that happen? Well, son, this gun, blah, blah, he pulls out a screwdriver and gives it a click, and all of a sudden it's good to go again. In another 2 weeks, it's loose again, design flaw. You don't understand that at 12 years old. You know what I'm saying? So, based on your experiences, or where you are on your learning path, you may not have been put in a position to ask a question that you would never ask before. So what size rear aperture is probably not high on your list if you're just now getting into this game, or one of the things that piques your curiosity when you're chatting over a couple of cold drinks, that question just doesn't pop up. Normally it's, how do you do this or how do you do that? There's a lot of little details that never get discussed because we don't know to discuss them. There's a whole lot of this game that a lot of people aren't ready to learn because it's painful and it's not an easy thing to do. What I was saying earlier about everybody in the Army is an expert, just ask them. The physical task of picking up a rifle and pointing it at a target seems so ridiculously simple, doesn't it? I mean, as a human being, as a competent human being with opposable thumbs, we look at that piece of equipment and the target downrange and go, this is going to be easy. That's the first thought that crosses our mind. Yet, when we get through the task, to the execution of the task, we get run over by a truck. Like, what just happened? Why is this so hard? People don't understand exactly what sight alignment truly means. I believe, personally, that across the community of high-power shooters, there are probably 10% that understand the importance of sight alignment and believe it to the point where they focus on it. Make it a point. I think, large in part, the detriment of Army marksmanship, or marksmanship in the Army, is the lack of understanding of how important sight alignment is. It's hard to explain focus on the top center edge of the front sight post to 90% of the Army, to 90% of the competitive shooting population.
No, you don't have to.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Got it. And they don't like that either. And that thing's a real Band-Aid, isn't it? But anyway, so right now I'm dealing with a percentage of the population that should be within that 10%. I'm talking to people in an audience that hopefully have an appreciation for the importance of sight alignment, right? Can I get a north-south? I mean, these are the people that should understand the importance of it, okay? But I still believe that when you boil all the fat off of it at the end of the day and you write up your talking points of all the things you want to talk about, how this went good and that went good, at the end of the day, when you look for a reason that those shots are not in the center of the target or at the desired location, 9 times out of 10 it's because of a failure to focus on the front sight. It's just that simple. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to have an excuse for a lot of things, and you ask them the first thing about sight alignment, oh yeah, I'm doing that. Are you? Are you trying to convince me, or are you trying to convince you?
Read the number board clearly.
So, I hope you don't take that the wrong way. There's a certain degree of what we have to do correctly before we can start figuring some other stuff out. Most of you know the name Brandon Green, right? Most, if not all. Brandon Green and I were pretty close when we were working together, and one of the things that I told him, Brandon Green grew up a Daisy match BB gun shooter, not a like a fine work bow or an Anschutz air rifle. He grew up shooting a Daisy pellet rifle and that JROTC stuff that the CMP sponsors now. Never shot a round of high power in his life till he showed up at the AMU. Kid knew how to point a rifle, just didn't know how to work a service rifle. So I told him through some times we were working on it, I said, if you do, you outline your shot process, right? If you do 90% of the things in that shot process 90% correctly, 90% of the time, you're going to be at or near the top of the Master Director's bulletin most of the time. Too many people strive to be, let me say that a different way. You can go out today, and this is one of the only sports, it's one of the sports that if you have the day of your life, the absolute epitome of your desires on a rifle range, so does the guy next to you, there's no guarantee that you're going to be at the top. Right? No guarantee that you're going to be at the top. I know personally that if I do what I'm capable of doing or give myself the best opportunity for each shot to be in the center of the target, by doing the little things correctly, that my name will appear at or near the top day in and day out. Not because I know more about sight alignment, trigger control than you guys do, because I do the stuff on the front end that allows the gun to be pointed at the center when I pull the trigger. Does that make sense? So if you do 90% of the things that you do, 90% correctly, 90% of the time, you will see your average increase. Promise you. Because as you work on that 90%, you're analyzing more and more on the things you're doing correctly. Let me sum this up with a close, or with a question. We talked earlier about writing positive notes in your data books. How many people in here try to build on their successes versus their failures? You build on your successes? Good for you.
Now. Says we had that talk.
Cooner and I were in the truck driving down here, and I asked him, I said, do you try to build on your successes or on your failures? He's like, on my failures. I want to do those things more correctly. Well, why don't you spend time working on the things that you're already doing right instead of working on the things that you're doing wrong? Because all you're going to do is keep doing those wrong, because that's all you're thinking about. If you work more hard or work just as hard on the things that you're doing right, you'll do them more and more right. You'll do them more right more of the time. And that's where that 90% thing comes into play. 90% is not a good average. It's pretty fair when you look out across society. To be in the 90th percentile, you're okay. But you see what I'm saying? If a 90%, that's an expert card. You ain't going to win nothing in the high master class with an expert card. But the more you focus on that 90%, then that number will work its way up. Because you'll start eliminating things that are happening accidentally. Nobody intends to point the gun in the 8-ring and pull the trigger. Okay? What allows that to happen? So if you work on the things that keep that from happening, if you work on the things that when you do them right, that doesn't happen. Does everybody see where I'm going with that?
What did Julia Watson tell you about shooting standing?
She told me a lot of things about shooting standing.
Don't have to shoot tens, or you don't have to shoot nines. You're allowing yourself to shoot them. Is that what she said?
Something like that, yeah. Billy Atkins says, if it don't look like a 10, it's probably not a 10.
It's true.
It is. So, what I'm trying to say is, if you, when I went to the one of the Army schools, I was in there with a kid that was a big combatives fighter, and I'm like, when you study the tape or replay a fight, do you build on the 4 minutes and 38 seconds of the round that you won, or the 22 seconds of the round where you got your lights knocked out? He's like, on the 22 seconds. I'm like, why? You dominated the guy for 4.5 minutes. You were doing it right for 4.5 minutes. If you did more of that, you'd own the last 22 minutes or 22 seconds. He's like, that makes perfectly good sense. So if you do what you're doing right all the time, then there's no room for error. It's not a matter of keeping from doing the other things wrong. It's a matter of doing it more right. And that's the art of positive thinking. And
I think along with that mindset is that once you start focusing on the things that you've done right, those little errors become more apparent.
absolutely. Remember what I was talking about, how when you make your conscious thought that simple,
Yeah.
then there's no room for other thoughts to show up. And when they do show up, when you get the, oh, look, the butterfly, then it's instantly identifiable. And when that happens, the pressure comes off the trigger and you just start all over. It's easy. So those are, that in a nutshell is what allowed me to be successful, or whatever you want to call, the fruits of my labor have been. Eyesight was brought up over the break. If I could just touch on this a little bit. I kind of broached it earlier, but a lot of people get their eyes checked and get their prescription, like Sergeant Stauffer was saying, and they think that that's what they need to know. You got your prescription. Well, I only wear these when I'm driving or when I'm riding or reading or whatever. But go through, if you don't mind, about what it takes to get a good shooting prescription, because I've never had one. I don't know.
Actually, I don't know if you're on that national match, that Art Guard guy, he makes these rectangular sights that work for you.
Hold on, ceasefire. We're not. No.
But no, I called him up and I'm checking out different things. I'm like, what do you need to get a shooting prescription? He's like, all right, you go to your get your regular prescription from your optometrist, and then you go and tell him, hey, you want your reading thing done if you're shooting a service rifle at 44 inches. So you got that little card that they put about right here. That's how you read. And he's like, put that at 44 inches for a service rifle, and then you have to go through the whole eye test. And he goes, it'll probably be between a half to 3/4 of a diopter difference, plus and up, so it's going to be less of a correction. So it's going to be half to 3/4 weaker correction, and that's what you need. That's something about hyperfocal planes and this and that. Anyway, I can type this up, or we can take notes here a little bit. I just got to find it on my phone. But so my optometrist, he didn't have his little rod that goes out in front. His rod only goes out 28 inches. Like, hey, listen, buddy, I need 44 inches. Well, match rifle shooters at 60 inches, I guess. So we get the tape measure.
No side radius advantage there.
And I'm holding it here, and he's measuring it at 44. We set up this tripod, we get it. And I mean, for me, it made a huge improvement. 2 days before I shot 600, I went 90. Get my prescription, and it changed a half diopter. I go and I shoot. Oh, it's now 197. Good load of X. Great, awesome. And I can see I was calling stuff. I mean, that's a little extra 3. Sure shit, it was. So I mean, in the total change of my old prescription versus my new, was not that much. But I can see the front sight and I can see the target. And it just made a big difference. For a small correction to make that big of a difference, just get your eyes checked.
Yeah.
So at 44 inches.
But is it 44 inches from where you put your head on the stock, or from your nose touching the target?
I'm not sure. It doesn't. I don't think that really matters, because the sight radius of a service rifle is what, 20 inches,
Right.
21 inches, 20 and a half, whatever. It's the way I look at it. It looks like whatever hyperfocal plane stuff. Just double, add an inch, and then double it, and that's what you need to have it check that.
So you got to make sure your optometrist has a long enough rod.
Yeah, or tape.
Or bring one in.
Tape.
Oh, it's 44 inches.
44 inches per service rifle.
60 inches for funny guns.
Yeah, I don't understand. I went and got my prescription done. I said, I see the front sight towards 20 inches, and I did that.
I'm not an optometrist.
I'm not saying what you've
What's the
done
significance?
so far.
Maybe a doc told her
I
to
think
go
it's a
herself.
good career though.
I'm not for sure. I can't explain it, Rick, but it may be worth. I'm not saying what you've done is wrong, but you've done the best what you knew to do. This is like, well, this is, it made sense, and that's what I did 2 years ago too.
Nobody can tell you what the 44 is.
I can find a better explanation on,
Okay.
but it's, I don't know.
Really, all you're doing when you're adjusting your prescription is you're making it easier to focus on the front side.
Yes.
I have lots of different glasses, with the exception of I have a pair of glasses, which is the one I tried to shoot in last year where the astigmatism correction is wrong. The different prescriptions, I can shoot the same scores with all of them, but the ones where I have a weaker prescription in it, older ones, it's easier for me to focus on the front sight. So I don't have to think about it as hard. But when I have a correction where I can like read everything, I corrected 2015. So there you go, Norm. But when I've got that one in and I can read things way far away, I have to consciously look at that front sight post and think and concentrate on it. Where, you know, this is the advantage we have over those people with good eyesight. We can back our prescription off to where it's not quite as good, and then that front sight post is just always in focus because it's the thing you can see. And then your target's down there. You still, it's still there, but you don't have to concentrate as consciously on looking at the front sight post.
And that's the advantage of shooting center mass. Center of a blur is the center of a blur. It's hard to make the distinction between white and black when you shoot 6 o'clock.
Well, I wouldn't get too wrapped up into having to have the absolute perfect prescription, you know, moving it from the center to up here, because all you're trying to do, with the exception if you're correcting for an astigmatism, but if all you're trying to do is see, you're looking at the front sight post. That's all you're doing. You know, it's not the difference between, you know, Jerry who might have 2120 to 1520. These guys have different things, and they're not chasing around prescriptions. As long as you can see the front sight post, you should be good.